Hello and welcome to Soft Spoken Storytime. I'm Cozy Kitten ASMR, and this is SCP-067, the Artist's Pen. Item number SCP-067, Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. When not in use or the subject of study, SCP-067 is to be stored in its felt-lined wooden box. The nib is to be corked, and all art and writings are to be submitted to SCP Research Command for analysis and further experimentation. Description: SCP-067 is a fountain pen made by a German supply company called Pelican at some point between World War I and II. It is pale green in color, with a single red line going straight down along the side. The shell is oak, and the nib is extremely sharp. Capable of piercing human skin if pressed even lightly. Though it appears to lack a reservoir, the nib never appears to run out of fresh ink. In addition, the pen writes in iron gall ink, which is suitable for artists but would normally corrode typical fountain pens quickly. Research has surmised that any subject holding SCP-067 loses all autonomy of the hand and arm that grasps it. Full sensation is intact, but the arm below the elbow is controlled by unknown forces. Theoretically centralized within SCP-067. One effect is that the controlled hand will start to use the pen to write a detailed biography of the individual holding the pen. The biography will include such information as the person's name, age, date of birth, criminal record, fears, etc. Other times, the pen has been known to write such things as an occurrence that happened in the person's lifetime. For example, when test subject 1204M held SCP-067, he began to write a detailed record of a motor vehicle accident he had been in the year before. Later, the subject admitted that many details penned in the account were not readily available to him at present time, i.e., the subject had forgotten many elements present in the written work, including his previous car's license plate number, the other vehicle's color, and so on. The subject stated that his memory of the event was so fresh in his mind during the transcription that he could taste the blood in his mouth. Subjects holding SCP-067 have also been known to create intricate works of art. Despite the subject lacking any formal art training or previous tendencies towards drawing. For example, Test Subject 1102F, a young woman with no previous artistic experience, was able to draw a winged creature resembling SCP redacted, described by researchers present as data expunged. When subjects are asked to explain what happens when they hold SCP-067, the typical response is that the subject freely relinquishes control of their appendage to SCP-067 so that it may complete its work unimpeded. See quoted response 01. Despite being instructed to not draw or write, subjects describe feelings of empathy, admiration, and cooperation with SCP-067 that coerces them towards a will not their own. Quoted response 01. I don't really know how to explain it. It just kind of happened. When I picked up the pen, it seemed as if my hand wasn't my own anymore. I knew I could move it if I wanted to, but I chose not to because I loved the picture I was drawing. It was like my hand had life. Suddenly, my hand stopped, and I realized I had complete control over my hand again, and I put the pen back down. I looked at the drawing and saw how beautiful it was. I guess the pen decided it was done and was finished with me. Tests and experiments. On redacted 20 redacted, a test was done to see how the pen affected living creatures other than humans. Experiment 001. The test subject, a male rhesus macaque, aged 2 years 4 months, who had previously learned how to use pens and markers, was placed in a standard psychological surveillance room. Neutral wall coloration, one-way observational mirror, with SCP-067, a work table, and a pad of paper. Subject picked up SCP-067 in his left foot, then took it in his right hand, then tasted it. Subject then put the pen down on the paper and smelled it. After 30 seconds, subject picked up SCP-067 again and began tapping it repeatedly on the table. Subject also began tapping SCP-067 on his own body. Subject tapped SCP-067 with increasing force until ink was being splattered on his fur. Subject then threw SCP-067 onto the floor. Subsequent mechanical analysis revealed no damage. At this point, subject tore a page from the pad of paper and began rubbing it on the ink in his fur. This continued for 3 minutes, after which subject clutched the page in his teeth and leapt from the work table onto the ledge of the observation mirror, with such force that the table was knocked over. Subject began smearing the ink from the paper onto the observation mirror, while making repeated vocalizations. Subsequent analysis revealed that 50% of vocalizations were consistent with the typical distress vocalizations of the rhesus macaque, and 50% were unfamiliar. After 6 minutes of smearing ink on the observation mirror, subject began tearing at the page with his teeth and claws, but dropped it before destroying more than 20% of the paper. Subject then collapsed on the floor, breathing rapidly and repeating the unfamiliar, atypical vocalizations. Subject's handler reports that, once removed from psychological surveillance room, subject's mood improved rapidly. Subject was closely observed for 2 months following the experiment, but did not repeat the atypical vocalizations. The sheet of paper was filed away in data expunged. SCP-068, the wire figure. SCP-068 in its dormant state. Item number SCP-068. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-068 is to be kept away from any metals in an electrically resistant box, preferably made of polytetrafluoroethylene, Teflon, and rubber. Said box is to be stored in Security Locker 26 at Site 11. Key is kept with Dr. Redacted. Any requests for testing are to be redirected to him. Description: SCP-068 is a wire stick figure, 9.8 centimeters tall, made of an unknown metal. The figure is composed of a single wire looping back to the center. The wire itself appears to have been bent numerous times in multiple places. When an electric current is introduced to SCP-068, it becomes animate, moving about on its own. SCP-068's joints are where a normal human being's would be. Once activated, SCP-068 begins to search for any metallic material. Once metal has been found, SCP-068 will begin to knead it and pull a thin strip of metal off. SCP-068 will then construct another figure similar to itself. The newly created figure will begin to knead the remaining metal alongside the original, creating new figures, which in turn produce more replicas. SCP-068 will move on to its next stage after one of two requirements are met. The first is when there are no more metals in range with enough mass to produce another figure. The other is when an upper limit of 102 replicas are created. When either of these events occur, all figures will converge at one location and begin forming themselves into as big a figure as possible. Within a maximum of 102 minifigures, the resulting figure reaches 2 meters in height. SCP-068 situates itself in the intersection of the torso, arms, and head. Gamma, beta, and theta waves begin emanating from SCP-068 after this union. SCP-068 will then begin to search for metals again, attempting to create more figures, only scaled up to whatever size 068 is currently at. These replicas do not emanate brain waves like 068 does. If 068 is not at the maximum size limit after this, it will continue to create and add more figures to itself until the limit is reached. Once it has reached the second stage and there are no metals available from which to construct figures, SCP-068 returns to its dormant state after 4 minutes and 32 seconds of activity. Materials surrounding the original figure must be melted away in order to retrieve 068. SCP-068 is capable of kneading and manipulating any metal presented to it, regardless of properties. It also appears to be impervious to any attempts to damage or destroy it. Copies of SCP-068, however, have the same properties and vulnerabilities as whatever metal they were constructed from. SCP-068 can detect metals hidden from view through an as-of-yet unknown process. While 068 will not attempt to reach metals that are too difficult to get to, it will tear through anything that is soft enough for its limbs to penetrate. What it considers soft enough changes depending on what 068 is shaped from at the time. Addendum 068-A. A proposal has been made to use SCP-068 to dispose of dangerous metal-based SCPs. Addendum 068-B. Please see attached document 068-A. Document number 068-A. The proposal to use 068 for disposal of dangerous metal-based SCPs has been denied, seeing as how many, if not all, of our dangerous metal-based SCPs are also invincible. The only thing we would have is a bunch of invulnerable wire figures running about. Honestly, who even thought this up? Dr. Redacted. SCP-069 Second Chance. Item number SCP-069. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-069 is currently impersonating former Foundation agent Redacted and is housed at Humanoid Containment Site 06-3. SCP-069 is to be provided with any reasonable requested item and/or material so long as such request does not violate Foundation security protocols. That sentence was crossed out. As SCP-069 is currently on suicide watch, all requests it makes must be approved by no fewer than 2 Level 3 personnel. If SCP-069 attempts to breach containment, it must be subdued using non-lethal methods. If SCP-069 dies, undercover agents are to be instructed to monitor reports of incidents in which individuals appear to have escaped certain death, and SCP-069 is to be recontained as soon as possible. Note: despite the fact that SCP-069 is identical in all ways to Agent Redacted, it remains an active SCP in containment and is not to be treated as a Foundation employee. Any requests for classified information are to be denied, and visits from former co-workers without proper authorization are not allowed. Description: SCP-069 is a presumed humanoid entity of variable appearance and gender. Through an unknown ability, whenever SCP-069 is left alone with a recently deceased human body, the body will disappear, and SCP-069 will take on the appearance, mannerisms, and knowledge of the recently dead individual. Through extensive experimentation, it has been shown that SCP-069 is completely indistinguishable from the individual it impersonates, matching the original individual's fingerprints, DNA, and data expunged with nearly perfect precision. SCP-069 retains no knowledge of its abilities or former impersonations. SCP-069 responds normally to injury and pain, but if killed will rapidly decay into dust, regardless of any preservation attempts. SCP-069 will then re-emerge at the site of the most recent human death. There is no known maximum range to this effect, and so far has been observed in jumps of up to 675 kilometers. SCP-069 can impersonate a single individual indefinitely. However, it will gain an overriding urge to get their life in order, including but not limited to resolving any outstanding financial or personal obligations, visiting extended family, updating their will and testament, and other acts of closure. When questioned, SCP-069 professes no driving motivation other than a desire to straighten out their life in the event of unforeseen injury or death. SCP-069 first came to the Foundation's attention on redacted 1990 redacted, following reports of one John M. Redacted, a redacted city firefighter, who miraculously emerged alive from a 3-alarm building fire in which 2 other firefighters and 11 civilians perished. Undercover agents attached to the local authorities were notified of a possible SCP when reports emerged that the firefighters' equipment had been damaged beyond recognition, and that it had been deemed nearly impossible for the firefighter to emerge unscathed. Approximately 3 weeks later, then presumed John M. Redacted responded to another large-scale building fire, during which he entered a smoke-filled room alone and was never found. A single civilian was rescued from the building, again nearly unharmed, despite the heavy smoke reported within the building. SCP-069 was designated the following day and rendered into Foundation custody by members of Mobile Task Force XI-3, Body Snatchers. Addendum 069-01 On Redacted 2000 Redacted Agent Redacted, a guard on duty assigned to SCP-069 was killed during the containment breach of SCP Redacted and subsequently impersonated by SCP-069. Although initially in denial after being informed of its identity, it has been mostly cooperative since its impersonation of a mid-level Foundation employee. Contingencies for the use of deceased Foundation employees for future SCP-069 is under consideration. Addendum 069-02 On Redacted 2000 Redacted, SCP-069 attempted to commit suicide after a junior researcher accidentally informed it that the family of Agent Redacted had been told that Agent Redacted was dead, and of their subsequent reactions. Due to the massive cost of possibly having to recontain SCP-069, strict suicide watch measures are to be implemented. Plans to use other deceased Foundation employees as possible impersonation targets for SCP-069 have been suspended.